As you know, we've been journeying as a church through a series of sermons on our vision and identity as a church. And that series is coming to a close very soon now. We're going to be beginning a study from there on Sunday mornings on the Gospel of Matthew. We're looking forward to that, but we're also thinking about how to go forward after spending time talking about these significant issues for the last few months, issues that matter a lot to us in terms of who we want to be as a church. And we're aware that just preaching a sermon here or there on these important concepts doesn't necessarily ground them deeply in us, does not necessarily allow us to internalize these things individually or corporately. And so what we're planning to do for the coming months and throughout this year, perhaps beyond, is to occasionally reinforce the ideas that we've already been talking about over the last few months and just keep coming back to this vision and identity so that we get it more deeply inside us. I hope that you will continue to join us as we do this in the coming months. Now, today and for the first month or two, we're going to be focusing on our identity statements. Let me just start by telling you what it is if you don't already know this. Our identity statement says that we are a scripture-guided, sacrament-grounded, spirit-gifted family of disciples living in union and on mission with Jesus to the glory of God the Father. Now, we've carefully thought about and chosen that language, and we're going to be teasing it out for you and explaining why we've chosen it over the coming weeks. But today, we just want to stop and ask the simple why question. Why even have an identity statement? Now let me, before I answer that question, make an important note. This is not a mission statement, and that may seem a little bit like a hair-splitting distinction to you, but I think it's meaningful. I agree with Dallas Willard, who says that we can't really improve on the mission statement Jesus gave us. And that's the Great Commission, Matthew 28. Go and make disciples of all the nations. Baptize them, teach them to do everything I told you to do. That is our mission, and we want to be charitable and assume that other churches have that mission, that they are joining us in that mission. However, even though we know that other faithful churches share in the mission, they don't share the same identity that we do. In other words, we have a different way of going about the mission and carrying out the mission. And that forms our identity. Once we can say how we're going about the mission, that's getting closer to who we are distinct from others. That's important to note as we answer this question. Why do we have an identity statement? And let me just give you two brief reasons. First, we have an identity statement because visitors to our church, to our website, they want to know who we are. And our name does not help them much with that. We are an Irving church. Well, great. Are you an Irving Baptist church? Are you an Irving Pentecostal church? Are you an Irving Methodist church? Just what exactly are you? What's your background? And people want to know that, and they need to know that. It's important for them to be able to know that as they are exploring different churches. So we want to be able to help them along with that. But perhaps we'd say more importantly, the second reason we have an identity statement is because it helps us as a church to understand what are and what should be our priorities as we navigate the future, as we think about how we're going to make decisions, as we encounter difficult situations. We want to say, okay, what comes first for us? What kind of things are we going to emphasize going into various situations? And having an identity statement helps us to say, oh, this should be a priority to us. We want to make these kind of things central to our thinking, to our processing, the various things that we encounter as a church. You know, sometimes when churches change a lot, they can come to emphasize who they are not. So we used to be that, but now we're not. And we're certainly not like those people over there. And that may be necessary and important to an extent, but it's also important to move past that to understand who we are and what we're for, not just what we're against. And hopefully this identity statement helps us to know the kinds of things that we are going to be for as a church. So, just to briefly summarize, our mission is to be disciples who make disciples. And maybe that sounds trite to you, so let me say it in a different way. Our mission is to be the people of Jesus, to be people who die and rise with Jesus, and to bring others along that same pathway, to die and rise with Jesus. When people encountered Jesus in the scriptures, they left their homes, they left their families, they left their jobs, they gave away their money because they were totally sold out to Him. We want to be a church that's totally sold out to Jesus, where that kind of attitude permeates the atmosphere when we gather, and that kind of attitude leads us into lives of radical discipleship. The identity statement is really just one tool among many others that we are hoping helps to guide us more deeply into that kind of life. Ultimately, what we're after is not a perfectly worded statement or anything like that. What we're after is a self-understanding, a knowledge of ourselves that will allow us to live into the deeper ways of Christ. We're not trying to master a statement. We're trying to master a way of life, a life of belonging to Jesus, a life of giving ourselves in His name to others. So the invitation is here for you as our church family, our brothers and sisters who are loving each other in the life of discipleship, to join us not just for these videos, but more importantly, to join us as we seek Christ together. I hope you'll be with us in the coming weeks and months as we pursue this understanding. But as I've said, not just an understanding, we pursue a life together. God bless you till next time.